Welcome back, guys. Another episode. We're literally going around asking strangers about their finances. Simple as that. Uh, all right. How about you introduce yourself? Say like your name, age, and like where you're from.
All right, Bates O'Brien, 39, from Georgia.
Georgia. Now I'm curious. What was it? How's your day going so far?
It's been a slow day. I busted my foot, but I don't need a foot for this. Tomorrow I will be doing a scene that largely involves walking. I will need my foot then. But for right now, it
Ouch.
doesn't matter. Yeah,
What you do to your foot?
I don't know. Probably just bashed it in the middle of the night,
Mm.
but it's got a nice little tomato-sized injury on the back of it, so it'll
Ooh.
heal.
Did you
It'll
go
heal.
running or something? Ah.
No, I have a history of thrashing while I sleep. And so I
Oh.
think I must be a kickboxer. Like, I just don't know it. I
Uh-huh.
woke up about 3 weeks ago, kicking the crap out of a gray storage tub in my sleep. And I could remember what I was dreaming about. And I was just beating the daylights out of the poor guy in my dream. It was,
Wait.
turns out walls are really hard. You shouldn't kick them. So, yeah.
Uh,
Aren't you glad you asked?
if you try to fight a wall, the wall's probably gonna win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wait, have you lived? Are you born and raised in Atlanta, or you just moved there?
Born and raised in Middle Georgia. I stay up here at someone else's home because I do a lot of work in Atlanta.
Or-
And it's a lot easier to get to Atlanta from here. It's about 30 minutes as opposed to 2 hours. But yeah, I've always lived in the, well, pretty much always lived in the Middle Georgia area.
Hmm, okay. May I ask you, what do you do for a living?
Gig work mostly. Sometimes answering Craigslist ads for interviews, actually. But mainly I'm an actor. Tomorrow I have a short bit where they need me to walk for some reason, and then an engagement photo shoot. Someone needs people to pretend to be couples so she can expand her portfolio. So I'll be paired up with a bride, presumably. We'll pretend to love each other, just like people do at real weddings. We'll pretend to love each other, and when
Wait.
it's over, we'll say, "I never want to see you again." So yeah, that's pretty much what I do for a living.
Another thing would be, what would you say your average annual income is?
Yeah. And see the calculators on the phone, which I'm using. It's under 20,000, mine personally. I share expenses with one other person, so we actually crack 30, but that's between I am on disability, and then I have about 300 a month in actual gig work, hoping to get that higher. So we're just together, we're about 30,000 a year.
May I ask about your disability? I'm curious now.
Um, Lots
You,
of different things. I was born just very old. That's the best answer. I've been on disability since, oh ye gods. November 2005, actually. I'm coming up on my 20-year anniversary. I have been on disability longer than most people are married. Um, and the reason has changed because differing health issues. I've had 2 strokes. I've got like
oh,
just lots of fun. Yeah. And then there's the clumsiness factor where I tend to beat things
fight a
while I'm
wall.
sleeping. I had a knee surgery, and I think I was already in a foot brace when I shoved my foot through a ceiling one day. And when I finally got to the doctor, he's like, "Why were you stepping through a ceiling?" I'm like, "Well, the ceiling got in my way." I was in the attic, and I just went straight through. And so
Oh,
the consensus is, and I've had this repeated, is I'm eventually going to be completely covered in bubble wrap
mm.
and then see what I can break. Um, Flip side, my bones are
No, it
never
froze.
hardened,
It
so I
froze.
can't actually break my
Oh,
bones. I can just
that's
bend
right.
them. Anyway, yes,
Mm.
back to you.
All right, now it's back. Sorry, it froze for a little bit.
Oh, you're fine.
Uh, um, how would you describe your financial situation?
Tenuous. We are right at the end of September. Student loan repayment starts in October. Yeah, I did not get in the first round that they did of loan forgiveness programs. I was going to fill it out, and the day I was getting ready to fill it out is the day that there was the lawsuit that put the injunction. I have not filled out the second one. I heard there is a second one you can fill with if you do it by the end of September, and I just realized that was today. Um, so it will be interesting to see where that goes. I I believe that if you're lean enough, you can survive in almost any situation.
Mm.
And so I live a very lean life, we'll put it that way. Very, very lean. And then I also now have the supplemental income of the gigs coming up. About 2 years ago, I was approved to go back to work. And when I was in Social Security's office, because I had gotten some small jobs, I'm like, I have to report this to them, see if they'll kick me off. And they said, well, you can bring in 900 a month and we won't care. And I
Mm.
cried a little because, poverty is fun and all, but I like food. Um, but no, it really just depends. I believe I'm sure my life could be a lot more comfortable financially.
Mm.
I always pay my bills. It might take a little bit of time for the taxes, but I am a big believer in you pay your bills first and then everything else comes afterwards. And that makes life a lot simpler. I know a
Mhm.
lot of people who have 2, 3 phone carriers. And the reason they do that is because they'll wait until they owe so much on one that it gets shut off and then they'll use the next one. And I remember talking to someone, I was like, well, why don't you pay your phone bill first? Well, then we won't have money for optional things.
Mhm.
And again, I even before I was an accounting major, I'm a very big believer in you pay the things that you have to pay first, and that makes everything else easier. I do have a lot of debt, which is the pre-interview covered. It's about 70,000 in student debt, and a lot of that's because I was the person who took all grants, all free funding I could, and then all federally backed loans that I could because that covered things like unexpected car trouble, sticking your foot through a wall, things that come up in everyday normal life. Um, okay, one of the times my credit line was actually extended for one of my credit cards. That morning is, I think, when we found our cat that had disappeared for a month. Turns out she had her tail caught underneath the house.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, she needed emergency surgery because she lived for the roughly a month she was under the house. We still don't really know how she stayed alive all that time.
Mhm.
And so the doctor had to, and so of course, again, that costs money. Everything kind of does because strangely enough, people want to get paid for the things they do for you. Very strange economy we live in. A lot of the jobs that I do now, I have to remind them I'm not really your friend. You must give me the money at the end. And so I was on a gig last 2 Thursdays ago
Uh,
and it went overtime and they did honor it. They did pay me overtime, which I was very surprised. I've had a few that were absolutely guaranteed, contracts signed, and at the end, one of the better ones at the end, they said, if we ever get financial backing for this, and all the actors on the set were thinking we're going to find that woman's car. And she said, if we ever get backing, you guys will get paid. So for things like that, that certainly makes things harder. Um,
uh,
you can't risk it unless you're willing to lose it, which again makes finances tenuous, to go back to that
mhm.
one word. Sorry.
For that gig specifically, so the actors there were like, they were told they were getting paid, right?
We were all, I don't know how many of us were told. Okay, me and my scene partner were told we were going to be paid.
Uh,
She was an angry Baptist grandmother who was going to blow my head off. Fantastic scene, by the way. She played it to a T. She starts crying. My character was a bad man. I would have wanted to shoot him too.
mhm.
She was told she would be paid. I was told I'd be paid. The other two people who played young hoodlums, I don't know if they knew they weren't getting paid because apparently one was drugged out of his mind. This was not the
Mhm.
safest set I've been on. Um, but yeah, she and I definitely thought we were going to be paid. We finally ran into each other about 4 months later at a different job. And I think she said at first, did you ever see money from her? I'm like, no, ma'am, not at all. But most are honorable. Most are, will tell you up front, is this free or not? I did 3 jobs 2 Thursdays ago. Like I said, the middle one did pay. The first one was just purely paying me to let them draw my blood. If I'm a mutant, pray for mutant. They will pay me very well after that. They're looking for a specific gene that is very abnormal for someone in my demographic to have. If I have
Okay.
it, yay. So they pay me for the blood. The third job was a freebie, so I just told them, I love that it's free. I have no problem helping people with their free projects. You must pay for my gas money to get home. And she
Mhm.
did. And so that's, again, tenuous. That's the best word for it. I think all of us in a contraction, the economy has contracted. I think a lot of people have come to that point of realizing that they have to be a lot more honest with themselves and with each other.
Mhm.
So if you can't afford to do something, don't do it. I know people who largely finance themselves on the basis of, well, one day I'll have money, so I'm going to buy this now. If you do that, you're just digging your hole deeper, says the person with credit card debt, which,
Okay.
sure.
Let's get into that. Do you have any debt?
Yeah. Um,
Eh,
I would say close to 100,000, might be 110 personally. And again, I share expenses. My mother lives with me, so like my debt is her debt. As far as I'm concerned, her debt is my debt. Yeah, because we do pool. But I have, I want to say 4 credit cards right now. Um, 2 of them stay semi close to maxed out. One I've actually paid down pretty well, and I don't use it. I just make payments on it.
Mm,
The other one I use every month and then pay down. 2 other credit lines. So that's the 2 credit lines. 2 of the other ones are no interest because I made massive purchases. I have a Best Buy card. My laptop I left it in a lift. I did not know I left it in a lift until 2 weeks later,
mm,
and I cannot continue on with what I'm doing without a laptop. So I had paid the card down. I went ahead and made the massive purchase because the larger the purchase, the longer you have to pay it off. So after you're dead, it will finally be paid off and I'll own that computer outright. And then I have, I think, 2 personal loans.
mm,
I'm a co-signer on a personal loan, and then I think I actually have 2 other personal loans that are just in my name. My mother needed a new roof, so we co-signed for her to get a new roof. She needed gutter guard, so I got a gutter guard. That was a personal loan for me, and then I got a personal loan at the beginning of this year to fix my finances. They are neutered; they're not repaired. There's apparently a difference in that word. I didn't know. So there's,
wait,
I
wait,
guess, yeah.
what's
Go
neutered?
ahead. I said it was to fix my finances. They're
Oh,
neutered. They're sorry, play on words. So that would make 4 credit cards and 3 loans plus the
okay.
student loans. Student loans, and I think it was in part to do an end run around the debt forgiveness. Instead of being one student loan, they broke them into I think 12 student loans, if I remember correctly. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same amount, but they're all much smaller. So in theory, none of them would be covered by debt forgiveness. I haven't checked that out yet, but like they all lowered way under any limit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Technically, I make so little money, which is kind of mixed bag,
Mm-hmm.
that probably my payment will be close to zero once I actually do start making payments in October.
Mm-hmm.
They will probably send me a wheel of government cheese because not making enough. And I'll tell them, hey, if you don't think I'm making enough, tell the people who pay me. I agree with you. But that's kind of where that is. If that does come into full effect, I'm figuring it'll be $100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I will then be running at a deficit of roughly 400 to 500 a month. Again, it's all one hand in the air. The strike is ending, they say. When the strike ends, there will be a lot more union jobs, which will be fantastic. I am not union, but that of course affects what I can do because movies that are one movie that I was cast in, I was going to be a football player. I'm guessing like a football player who's clumsy. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. But they said we want you for a football player. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Um, Day of production, they sent me a message. They said, you know what? Didn't occur to us. This is a union production. We can't do anything. So things
Mm.
like that might come through now, in theory. That was a really long way of not really answering your question, but
Mm-hmm. Now I'm also curious. When you got those credit cards, what was like your mindset getting those credit cards? Like,
uh
did you believe
stupidity.
you're gonna pay
No.
them on time
Oh,
and everything?
absolutely. When I
Take
got the
advantage of the
Walmart,
points and everything.
yeah, no, when I got the Walmart credit card, I had no credit history at all. And that was something that had come up because I was working on purchasing my home. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, we can't prove you live. Like, you've got nothing. So Walmart did a credit card day where they were giving literally everyone a credit card. I mean, just anyone who walked in, you get a $400 credit card. The person I was with already had a Walmart credit card. They gave her a second one because it
Mm-hmm.
was just credit card day.
Right.
And
Every day is
mostly I
credit
didn't
card
use
day.
it. It was a gas card. That's all it was for. It was 400. It now has a $5,000 limit, I think, and it's around 4,000 is actually used on it. Mostly it's been used when something broke on the card, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Kroger card was kind of the same thing. I had just become a student. It was, I think, actually 2 weeks before I began classes. I was a very late college student, and I went in and they said, we want you to sign for this. I'm like, you're not going to approve me. And the girl said, I know, but my job depends on you applying. She said, you'll get like a $50 credit card. You might be able to buy a shoe with it. Like it will be
uh,
worthless. And I'm like, cool. It had a $2,000 credit line. And I was like, this does not look right. Uh, Went, used it on like a $10 purchase to make sure it worked because
mhm.
I'm not trusting. It now is at a $10,000 credit limit.
Ouch.
And I
Uh-huh.
have used it for taxes, car repairs, you see a theme. Vet bills, car repairs. Our cars, we used to borrow it from the mechanic because we'd want to drive it every once in a while. So that one's at 10,000. The other two credit cards, one was Best Buy. My phone at the time, my cell phone at the time was playing games with me. It was so broken. I'm a BlackBerry person. The
Mhm.
BlackBerry that I replaced in, I want to say it was 2018, had, I think, still no battery cover plate, was missing like 10 buttons. I was still
Mhm.
using it. It stopped being functional. I could not continue with what I needed to do without a phone. So I went to
Mhm.
talk to Best Buy. They had a phone. I figured again it would be a $50 credit card. It was, I think, a $2,000 credit line. So I got the phone and then some other school supplies. My laptop had gone to heaven. So that would be the one I actually just lost at the Lyft. The Lyft driver did give me back my computer, by the way. It took a while and a lot of money, but he did give it back to me. Um, so that is now up to like roughly 5,000. Whatever the credit line is on that.
Mhm.
But yes, to answer your question, when you get the credit card, you always have the little, hamster on the wheel saying, "I'm going to pay this off. I'm going to pay this off." That hamster is dead. Best Buy, I have never owed interest on. I have always paid off every single thing I've gotten on it, and again, it's on time. I have a Home Depot card. I got it. I want to say for home repairs. I don't remember why I got it originally. It was
Mhm.
probably $1,000 credit line. It's up to like 4,000 now. It is almost paid off. I'm just saying credit line, not what's actually owed on it.
Okay.
Um, Same thing, no interest. I will actually be paying it off and not using it again for a while, hopefully, in 2 months.
Okay.
It will be paid off. Best Buy is going to be paid off in, I think, 6 months at the current
Mhm.
payment rate. I do also have an account with Firestone Tires, oddly enough. I just remembered. That's a $2,000 credit line, but I've never used it. I went to get tires, and they
Mhm.
would not sell us tires unless we had a credit line because that's where life is. So I got a credit
What?
card.
What?
Um, it's
What?
a $2,000 credit line. They broke something inside the car when they were working on it. And so I
Uh-huh.
just said, no, we're leaving. So I still have the credit line. It's just sitting there nice and untouched. I mean, it's very pretty. Every once in a while, they'll send me an email. Are you still alive? Because you're not using this. I'm guessing they'll shut it down at some point because if you do not use a credit line for a certain amount of time, they do tend to shut it down. But I leave it where it is. It helps my debt ratio look better because there is the $2,000 of credit limit not being used.
Mhm.
So from that aspect, it was a wise choice. Um, but yeah, of course there is debt there. It's all catch as catch can. They just increased my mother one of her credit cards, and so that's what we're going to pay her taxes with probably at this point.
Mhm.
Most tax offices will let you make payments. The one that's actually for her home, which I'm in right now for work, last year they said we'll let you make payments, and we're like, that's great. And we made, I think, one payment. And they said you need to give us all the money now, or we're selling your house next week. And like they just went from zero to boom. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, I'm sorry, what now? And they said, yeah, we're going to sell your house next week. Or that was, I guess, 2 years ago. But last year they did the same basic thing. They said, we're just going to sell it. It'll probably be next week. And
Mhm.
that would be when I got the last personal loan because her house needs repairs. Um, it is her home. She doesn't actually, she's down at my house right now because I'm up here. We cannot actually be like both in one home or the other one might be vandalized or whatever.
Mhm.
But her home has a net worth of like 200,000, 250,000. So I'm not going to let someone, for $3,000 taxes sell the house. No.
Mhm.
So I did get the personal loan. That is
Mhm.
a $300 a month payment. It'll be paying in perpetuity. We'll both be grandfathers by the time it's paid off. Um, Going down the line, this house does have a lot of worth to it. When the time comes and we unload it, it
Mhm.
will be more than enough to pay off all the debts, which is actually kind of fun. We're at a point where if the house was burned to the ground, the property itself could probably zero out our debts. So that will be nice. We just have to get to the point of selling it, which is a whole nother ball of chaos, and we're not going to get into that. But go ahead.
um, do you happen to have any investments like 401k, retirement account, Roth IRA,
I
stocks?
No, actually, when you're on disability, one of the things they ask you is, do you have any investments? And they can cause you a lot of problems if you do. So that is one reason I've avoided it, is because for me, even the check isn't as important as the medical benefits because on top of being accident prone, I've had most of my organs fail at some point or another. Um, I just, let's see, I don't think it'll actually show this. I've got this lovely stab wound. I've used it in gigs since then, told people I was in a knife fight and they believe it. That was
Mm.
for my last surgery for my heart. So I really cannot afford to lose the medical,
Uh-huh.
which turns off and on. And for that, again, too, one of the first things they ask you is, do you have any investments? Because if you've got any potential money, we want to know and cut you for it.
Right.
I do have a life insurance policy that is, it actually increased a lot. It was like $1,000 policy. It's up to, I think, 10,000 now. And it is through the Macon city government, some sort of trust fund, not trust fund, but like a union, credit union. When my
Mm.
father worked there back in the 80s, he set up credit union accounts for his kids. Yay.
Mm.
And somehow that defaulted into me having $10,000 life insurance. So if I die, yeah, I get a $10,000 check. While I'm alive, I have zero investments. I invest in myself. It was a poor choice. Go ahead. I could do better.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You said you had student loans, right?
Yes.
Did you end up like going through with college and like getting a degree? Like, what is?
Um, I did go to school I started in 2014. There were lots of, okay, about once every semester I had to drop out, once every other semester because of, let's see, second semester I don't know where this is being posted. I'll be really careful how I word it. I had surgery on below the belt for
Uh-huh.
an issue. So I missed most of that semester. Next semester I was fine. Semester after that, my sister-in-law died. So like I took a really long time. That's my defense, at least, for why it took me over 2 years to get a 2-year degree. I
Mm.
do have a degree in accounting. I have an associate's in accounting. I switched over to psychology. I was
Uh-huh.
working towards a bachelor's. The first stroke was in 2019 was the first stroke. The second stroke was in 2020, and I stopped being a student. At the height of it being a problem, I was also a math minor at the time because math has always come easy to me. I
Mm.
was sitting in class and I could not figure out what those funny little symbols on the board were, like
Mhm.
numbers and stuff. And when I started crying in the guy's class, he knew there was a problem. And
Mm.
so I told him, I said, I can't tell what you're writing on the board. It looks like absolute gibberish to me. And that's kind of when we knew that there was some lasting damage from the strokes. It's
Ooh.
abated mostly. There are times where I still have basic trouble with reading.
Mm.
So to answer your pending question of was I able to use the accounting degree, when I was actively an accounting major, I probably could have used the degree to do tax preparations and such
Mm.
because I understood the fundamentals of it. Um, Honestly, I would not have been able to stay an honest person from what I was like several people told me you will be doing illegal things if you stay in accounting. I'm like, wow. Um, I
I
was
see
gonna
that.
still be working for the mob, but I wouldn't be able to keep it going anyway because there are times where I can't do basic math, sadly.
Mm.
The psychology degree, I second stroke really slowed things down,
Okay.
and I ran out of funding. And so I
I'm
was like, well, you know what? This when everything is kind of hitting at once, maybe it's a good idea to step back. So
right.
1 week before the school shut down for COVID,
Mm.
I left the school. I had very wonderful professors. Some people say, oh, they just went and worked with you. They worked with me.
Mm.
I actually could have finished the 2 classes I had remaining. One of them I finished. It was all by Zoom and whatever. And dear God, that poor man had to read the stuff I wrote because I know probably about half the time I would write an answer to him that was not really words because brain damage.
Mm.
So he had a fun time trying to grade my stuff. The other one, I never actually finished her class, which made her very sad because she understood because they had a track record with me from before the strokes. I was having massive seizures like from before I even went to that school, but like they could see the difference really hung out, they all have a problem. Um, the first stroke was actually at a store. The second one was on campus. And the main reason I like to bring it up is because I actually attended class after the stroke, the second one.
Mm.
And I had it in front of a student. She's screaming and crying. She already knew I had medical issues. And I'm laying on the floor. And I get up. I'm like, I am just laying on the floor again. I get up. I'm drooling real hard. And I tell her, I'm fine. Shut up. I'm fine. And so I go into class kind of dragging and drooling. The professor never noticed that there was a problem with me, as far as I can tell, and I'm sitting about 20 feet from him. So
Mm,
apparently I drooled a lot and didn't realize it. But I made one dumb comment about something and then just kind of stopped talking and went to the hospital after that. And they're like, yeah, you had another stroke. So at this point, I probably couldn't use the accounting degree legitimately because there are, again, times where the numbers do not work. I've
mm,
lost a good chunk of what I learned, sadly. For psychology, I never did get the degree. I use it on a daily basis, thankfully.
mm,
Not just because psychology is something everyone needs to understand. It's like financial literacy. Everyone should have to attend financial literacy classes. They really should.
mm.
I loved the accounting classes, and I would become very much an evangelist. I would tell people you need to do an accounting class. Well, I'm a such and such major. No, you need to do it if you want your own business, if you want to understand that you're not being cheated, if you
Mm,
understand basics of why you pay your taxes in the time that you do, so you reap the most benefit, an accounting class. For psychology, I use it because the acting gigs, a lot of times, if you understand the underpinnings of why is someone necessarily homeless, or I've done mentally ill people in like a mental hospital thrashing around the walls, and they're
mm.
like, you seem to understand being crazy. I'm like, yeah, it's real easy. I've done role plays for the military where I had to be someone who was having a nervous breakdown, or they would give me a mental disorder and I'd be like, oh cool, I know what that is, which always worried them that I was familiar with it. One of my gigs about a month ago was pretending to be in a rehab support group at a rehab,
Mm,
and psychology of course talks with addiction, and so it was very easy from the clinical standpoint to be able to say, okay, this is why my person would be feeling this way about X, Y, or Z.
mm.
When it comes to sexual deviations, that's a little harder because I know the clinical issues. Thankfully, I've played very few deviants. Hopefully, that continues.
I'm an idiot. What is a stroke?
What is a stroke?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Um, Trying to think of an actor you might remember that had a stroke. There's been a few that actually had strokes during their TV series, and you can tell the difference.
Uh,
Basically, it's the blood stops flowing for a little bit in your brain.
mm,
Now there's more like degrees of strokes. Mine were ruled as TIAs, which is I think it's trans ischemic attack, which is like a temporary blood flow stop. So like if I get really tired, my right leg will
mhm.
start dragging behind me.
Uh,
I was a waiter once, and we reached hour 12, and my right arm stopped moving. And so I was with an awesome crew. They're like, you know what? You're done lifting tables. How about you just sit and hold that chair down? So it's basically it's just the blood stops flowing briefly, and your brain needs blood. Now there's like I said, much more extreme cases. There's a book, Stroke of Genius.
uh,
So she was able to understand first off what was happening, and in her case, she actually did have a brain bleed where the blood interacts with the brain, and the brain can't actually interact with blood directly because I think it's the metals in the blood. And so it caused her severe, like permanent damage.
mhm,
In my case, like I said, it's mostly was temporary. There's some things that are more pronounced. My speech will slur if I get real stressed out. People usually just think I've been drinking. I don't drink, so yeah. Before that, I had the seizures, which they fear is the same basic thing. The
mhm,
best guess they had at one point was either the heart or the brain. They didn't know which would start first. The
mhm,
heart would stop briefly, which means blood flow would stop briefly, which means then this would, um, at one point they were thinking it was the lungs because my lungs are very scarred.
mm,
The lungs sometimes don't feel like they're supposed to. If the lungs aren't feeling like they're supposed to, oxygen isn't getting to the part like it's supposed to, then ours, it's a game of trying to figure out where things start from. But yes,
mm,
that's what a stroke is the blood flow issue.
mm,
Once you have that issue, there's cognitive decline. Usually there's pronounced difference in the right or the left hand.
mm,
I was exceedingly lucky, and there's just no other way of looking at it. I both times I was with other people when it happened. A lot of people have strokes by themselves. Both times I did go to the emergency room. Now I did not go. The first one happened in a Goodwill. They were terrified of me after that.
mhm,
I had a massive seizure that morning and was bashing my head against a wall. It was a really bad seizure.
mm,
And it had finally calmed down. I'm like, I want to go to campus, but I don't want to go there and flop around. So I
right.
stopped at a Goodwill to just walk around, see how I was doing. And the first thing I noticed is I couldn't read. And I was looking at books and like, it's gibberish. And that's happened before after a real bad seizure. And I don't know if you remember early 2000s series, Firefly, but
Mm-hmm.
they have a very distinctive font. And so I saw something and I knew it said Firefly on it because I recognized the font.
Mm-hmm.
I could not read the word. And so I remember saying, I think something's wrong. I'm going to use the bath. And I went into the bathroom and then I was laying on the ground. And then, so I got up, very angry that people were, fussing over me because, of course, I think I'm fine. And I'm saying, I'm fine, which, when you're saying it like that, they know you're not fine. So I stood up the second time. Then I was on the ground. Um, so then we went to the hospital. And that time they kept me for about a week. And they wanted to put me into therapy for a few months. Now, what they didn't tell me, which I didn't actually learn until a year later in a class, is one of the reasons you go into physical therapy after a stroke isn't just if there is damage. It's prophylactic. It's to make sure there isn't more damage. So they help rewire your brain and encourage neuron growth because you suffered damage, whether you can tell or not. I declined going to therapy because I had physical therapy because I had classes still. The second one was the one at the campus. I went home. I thought I was fine, even though I didn't feel good. I climbed up the steps. I made it up 2 steps, and I couldn't get off the porch. I was just kind of laying there in the rain with my, and you're frozen or sleeping. I'm not sure, but yeah, you're frozen. Okay, but yeah, like I just laid on the porch, and that's when I realized I had to go to the hospital because I could not physically get up off the. So I just kind of slid down the stairs like a puddle. But that is what a stroke is. Sorry. I can be overly verbose.
You're good. Another question. What is in your bank account? Any savings?
I'm sorry I lost you. I got what is.
What is in your bank account? Any savings?
Oh, what is in my bank account? No savings. Again, that is actually intentional, believe it or not, because one of the things they ask you once a year to continue getting medical benefits is, do you have any money in your account at all? I keep 100 in my account, period, because I've had times where a payment comes up that I didn't realize was coming out or that I thought I already paid. And so I try to keep a $100 cushion in my account at all times, but that's it. All of the money comes out. It is usually then turned into credit card funds because paper trail for one thing. Currently, I have about 200 in cash. That's because a couple of gigs paid me in cash. And so I have the cash on me right now. Most gigs now are paying through Cash App if they don't use checks. So it goes to Cash App, then to my account, then to whatever credit card. I use one predominantly for Ubering when I have to get to a gig. So it's the cycle of money. It comes from them and Cash App, turns into the bank account, turns into the credit card, turns into the Uber, turns into me getting to the next gig. But to answer your question, no, I do not have savings.
It's like that would be like your emergency fund, the $100 type of thing.
Yeah, $100 is in there in case something extra comes through the account. Beyond that, there is no emergency fund. I do have room on the credit cards if an emergency comes up. That's it. When the COVID shutdown happened, they opened a once a week free food bank down the street from my house where I live in Macon. And so once a week I was absolutely there. And I credit them. We had people in line with Jaguars. We had people in line coming from jobs. Like they'd be open. We're like, I work for the city. I work for the bank. I can't afford to pay my house note and food right now. And so that was their emergency fund. I try to stock up on actual like food, not candy bar food. When able, like right now I've got I think 4-pound bag of chicken in my freezer because it was on sale. And so that's probably the closest to an emergency fund I have is using the money to buy things I will need down the line. When I have less lean times, I usually buy 2 pairs of boots at a time because I wear through boots in about 2 months, 3 months. I am someone who walks a lot. Before the foot bust, I injured about 2 weeks ago. That slowed me down too. I was doing about 50 to 60 kilometers a week, which is like, oh goodness, probably 40 miles a week and walking. And I don't have a normal gait, so my heels disappear real quick. So again, for me, my emergency fund is having an extra pair of shoes. You wear through wardrobe quickly when you're doing acting gigs. So every Monday, I go to Goodwill on the Dollar Day and I buy more clothes for wardrobe. I try to, of course, keep it reasonable because there is a point where I really don't need 5 pairs of pants if I'm not working that month. Yeah, that's just part of life. I actually, closest again to a emergency fund, I did buy a $40 chair there because it's a medical chair and it's $2,000. So right now I'm trying to hawk it for 1,200. If that happens, yay. But as far as liquid money, no. I have the $100 in the bank, and then whatever cash is currently in my pouch at this point.
Do you budget?
Which is yes and no. Big fan of Excel. Don't remember how I set up the spreadsheets because I did it so long ago, and that part of my brain's gone. But they're still there, thank God. So I just type the stuff in, and it fixes it. So I do budget as far as making sure that every month the bills are paid. That is the first priority, period. And then whatever is actually left after that, I get real worried, wondering why there's something left. And then I sock it to whatever other things come up. But yes, absolutely. I'm someone who believes firmly in. I did just read that someone said for budgeting, you should do, I think they said it was 60, 20, 20, 60 for what you're living on, 20 for savings, 20 for entertainment. I do not have that level of budgeting. That would be nice. I have a make sure that bills are paid. No one's going to break my knees. Let's put it that way. So again, even when the jobs come in, I file the money into the Excel folder, see what it's going to be for the next month. That's a lot of how I decide if I have extra money, is not, do I have extra money this month, but what does the projection say I will have next month, including with this? And if it's running at a deficit, then that really doesn't mean I have extra money to work with. I'll still use it as need be, certainly, but yeah. But no, I don't have a budget in 5 months I'll have this much saved, or rainy day fund. I have, oh dear God, let the tires not shatter fund. Currently our vehicle, we were paying a mechanic to repair a truck several years ago, right around the time, which again, medical bills. My mother, they thought she had a very, very terminal tumor in her womb area. And the doctor cried. Like that he's like, it'll be okay. I've never seen one this bad. And so she gets in and he's like, no, test was wrong. You do have problems, but not that. But around that time, the mechanic was like, well, let me get you a van because we can do a straight trade and it'll be easier for you to drive. That is the vehicle that is now very, very just like, it just sits in the driveway. If you drive it, smoke shoots out the doors, the actual doors themselves. It looks like a music video. Like I'm hoping to sell it as a prop car once we don't use it, because you can't breathe the fumes or you'll end up sick. But like, it's really cool looking to turn the car and have smoke shoot out the doors. Not safe. So he's currently working on getting us yet another replacement vehicle. I'm actually going somewhere with this. Once that happens, I should have better range for getting gigs done because we'll have a vehicle again. But yeah, no, I do budget as in pay your bills. Because if you don't, first off, it's not honorable. If you make a debt, you really should pay it. Which, again, that's a principle I think is largely dead. And then also I do mitigate the bills. I've got a hospital down in Macon that says I owe them money. I disagree. So I'm trying to help them like remember I have insurance. So in that case, I don't plan on paying it as long as the insurance is supposed to cover it. Yeah, that was a really roundabout way of saying, yes, I budget and I make sure I pay the bills each month. No, I don't budget as far as I can tell you. Next month, I'm going to have so much set aside for cheese, so much set aside for entertainment, so much, for paying off mafia people. No.
How's your financial situation growing up?
Feast or famine. That's the term you usually use. When I was really little, my mother worked in a factory. My dad had a city job. Like that was pretty good finances. But we still, of course, things could get tight. When he worked his own business, he was an electrician for years. Again, feast or famine. There are times where you can have 10 jobs lined up, and that doesn't actually mean you've got money for 10 jobs lined up. That means you have to pay for parts for 10 jobs at once. So that was very tight. In around 2000, he started working for the city of Atlanta. That made things much looser. At that time, I was taking care of my grandmother about 21 hours a day, which kind of meant I was living there. I would get her mail and her neighbors would be like, you live here. No, I still live at my house. You were here yesterday morning. I'm like, yeah, I was. So we all moved up here. Finances got much more constricted. That would have been my early 20s. He got a life insurance policy. That's what fixed things. And it's a really sad way to look at it. Right after it matured, he found out he was dying. Like right after it matured, as in they would not have had to honor it had he known sooner. Yeah, he had stage 4 cancer. And so that zeroed out most of our debts in general. Um, in 2010, we started helping someone in another state, a relative, and
Mm,
that kind of set things back. And I know I'm progressing further into adulthood, but a lot of it is the feast or famine mindset, where there have been times where we've had a nice nest egg set aside and then things do deplete it.
mm,
Um, I am a big believer that you should try to help people if you can. I'm also now, as you get older and your earning power does diminish, you start thinking, you know what? I was an idiot 20 years ago. They should have gone to someone else for that help, and I should have just kept that money.
mm,
Now, if it happened, I would absolutely be the person. I just had someone that I met at a gig, and it ran way late, and he was going to have to MARTA home, which is our mass transit up here, and MARTA was shut down at that point.
mm,
And so I told him, I said, look, I'll let you ride my Uber. I'll just change the route a little bit. It'll cost me $8, but you'll get home. And so I just got a message from the young man the other day. He said, I need to ask a favor of you. I'm like, okay. And he sent the message a few times. I need to ask a favor of you. And I think he was working up the nerve. And I told him, I said, I don't know what the favor is, but ask me. He's like, I was going to ask if you'd get a car for me. I was like, no, no, no. That was like a one-time thing. I can't. And I told him, I said, the money that I have set aside, so in that case, it is budgeting. I usually get quote Uber money or Lyft money, fill up the account.
mm.
That was at zero. And so I was like, that's not going to happen.
Did he ever
Um,
tell you how much was the car gonna be?
oh, the replacement car. All he'll say is, we'll work it out. Don't worry. And then he kind of chuckles.
Mm,
He's a really nice guy, the mechanic. Okay. So to back it up, because every story is long, our van was stolen in 2016. It was totaled out. We got her loaner car. We were actually working to sell my mom's place. She fell and broke her back. So when she fell and broke her back, the people that we were going to sell the house to ransacked the house and broke things because humans are lovely.
mm,
Um, so that's how we ended up with a truck. That truck was a gas pit and constantly breaking, which is then how we switched over to the van. Van is money pit and breaking. When he finally told us about the car, he didn't tell us for a while. He just wasn't really communicating. And the
mm,
way we pay him is every month we pay him $100, period. We pay one debt off and another one, something else breaks. And finally he said he was going to try to get us a replacement vehicle. And we're like, that sounds wonderful, but how are we going to afford it? And he just says, oh, we'll work it out. And he kind of chuckles, that Dr. Who. um, and you get a little worried. He stopped talking for a while, so we went ahead and just took him his money, and his heart apparently is bad. So, because part of living in a society,
mm,
my individual problems, my individual success, my individual is the individual. But if you're living as a society, everybody's day really does affect everyone else's.
mm,
So our car situation is, from what I understand, a rather nice car. She has looked at it up and out of town when she went to check on it. It is going to improve, but his heart comes first because that's his problem. That's his life.
right.
And we're not about to tell somebody, well, can't you get up off the operating table and work a little bit quicker? No.
Mm,
So that's dependent on that. And the same thing, of course, there's times where I've had to cancel jobs. I had to cancel one last week or 2 weeks ago because my foot was busted at that point also. And I told him, I can't get down my stairs. If I can't get down my stairs, I can't do what you need.
right.
And while from my point of view, that was a simple decision because I couldn't do what they needed. They then had to
Mm,
scramble and find someone to help them. So that is where the societal issue of it comes in. I do believe we all need to be self-sufficient and able to protect ourselves, take care of ourselves. But we also have to realize that the person next to us is going to impact our lives and we are going to impact theirs.
mm,
That was a really wordy way of not answering your question. Go ahead.
mm. Very good. Another question would be, what advice would you give your younger self? Let's say like 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I just saw that the other day and I was like, run. I don't want to be too honest because that would be really depressing for whoever this is for that might be listening.
Go for
Um,
it. Go for it.
okay, well,
Go
I'll be
with
honest. If
honesty.
I could talk to my 20-year-old self, I would tell him, get the gun and
No.
please shoot yourself in the head.
No.
No, you asked. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I would absolutely say it. That was the right plan. I've thought about that a lot. It's like, man, life was easier when you were 20. Yeah, should have pulled the trigger then.
No.
Um, I no, I mean, you want me to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
I didn't see for the
If I
honesty.
could go back to when I was 18, for instance,
Mm,
at 18, I had an acting gig lined up. I was 18 and it was through the Penny Pincher. I don't know if you remember that paper. And like I was gonna do it. I was like, this
Uh-huh.
sounds interesting. And they're like, we take all types, which to me
Uh-huh.
means they do take ugly people. Yay. I talked to the woman and she started talking about, well, once you send us in your pictures, you're so good looking. I hadn't sent them anything. I'm like, no, I'm really not. And I backed out.
Mhm.
If I could go back in time, roughly 20 years, I would have told myself, slap myself around and said, do it.
Uh-huh.
Because first off, it's very, very rewarding. It's very enjoyable work and it's money. And they do need ugly people, which is how I make money now.
Mhm.
Tomorrow will be a suit and tie for two things. That's very rare. Usually it's torn up clothes and act like you're going to cut somebody. Um, I've been paid to be a female prostitute. I mean, I've had really weird jobs. That was
Mhm.
for the military. No, I didn't actually do anything. I was just, they hired me to scare soldiers because apparently me with a really big chest saying, hey, doll, is terrifying. It was. Scared me. So, yes, if I went back in time 20 years ago, I would have said definitely do that differently.
Mhm.
Um, would have been a student a lot sooner. And I know that that's something you don't necessarily hear about because a lot of people talk about student debt. And of course, that is an issue. When you're a lot younger, you have a much simpler life, usually.
Mhm.
Um, that's something I definitely regret is not working harder at that when I had much more constrained schedule because I was taking care of my grandmother until she died in '06. So I was 22 at the time. But I could have gotten my butt in gear when I was 23. Both of them were dead. I could have done that. I should have. Even going back 10 years,
Mhm.
which would be 2013, so let's say 14 years, push it back a bit, would not have helped the person in Idaho. And I know that sounds awful again. It was an aunt. The last day I went to help her out in Idaho is when she pulled a knife. So like that was a really bad choice.
Why did she pull a
Um,
knife on you?
she found she had changed her mailing address. I mean, this is just a very strange story, but okay, like when you move from one place to another, if
Mhm.
you put your last name family,
Mhm.
all the mail moves with you. Okay, so even though she's my maternal aunt, she and my mother both married men with the same last name.
Mhm.
She, because she was crazy, moved her mailing address to our house in Georgia, even though she hadn't moved in with us yet.
Mhm.
She then moved all of us to her house in Idaho. So she starts getting our billing information. I'm going out every couple weeks to help her. She had decided not to sell her house. So there was a big lawsuit thing. She went ahead and got us joined to the lawsuit. I mean, it was a mess. And so I'm sitting there and she starts talking about all the money we have. I'm like, I'm sorry, what now? All my money is going to bus tickets to come and help you. I was kind of bitter at that point. It had been a bad month.
Mhm.
And the reason I was as late as I was is because I waited long enough for our cat to die in my arms. Like it would have been a bad month. And so I get there and she's like, her house is smoking. And I'm like, what's
Mhm.
wrong with your house? Oh, someone set it on fire. I'm like, but where is the fire at? There's smoke coming. I don't know. I think I put it out. I'm like, I really need to get out of here.
Mhm.
Um, that day to get into her house, she had stopped answering. I went to the local police. This is in a little town called Fruitland, Idaho. It's an actual name, Fruitland.
Mhm.
And the police are like, oh, we know your aunt. I'm like, why do you know her? Because she sells drugs. I'm like, oh, this was such a bad, like, wrong choice. So I'm sitting there. She got our bank statement. She saw how much we owed because we had gone ahead and gotten a second mortgage on this house. It was already paid off. We got a mortgage on it to help her move down.
Mhm.
She saw the credit line, which was how much was
Oh.
owed,
Mm.
and thought that meant we had that much money sitting in the bank.
Right.
So she pulls a knife on me and tells me to get out of her house, only a lot less politely,
Right.
because I would not admit to having, yeah. So that's the last time I saw her. She did call about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and she actually said she'd had stroke and she wanted to know could she move in with me. And I was like, no, you gods no. And I'm like, you're not even saying, and she's like, she didn't say she was sorry. She didn't say she changed. She's like, yeah, I've had strokes. So you take care of me now? No. So again, if we're going with like 15 years ago, I would have said, don't help crazy people in other states. Just throw it out there. If I could go back 10 years would have been 2013. Um, a lot of the financial choices I made in 2013, I actually do agree with. I did not finalize purchasing the house, and that has been a blessing in some ways. My
Mhm.
mortgage is $50 on my house. Like that's all I owe a month. Yeah, like that's a really great mortgage. The mortgage on this house is $97 a month. So even though it would be better long term to have this place sold, which is the plan,
Mhm.
$97 a month is not hard to swallow. $50 a month is not hard to swallow. But going back, like you said, just 5 years ago, that would have been after stroke number. That would have been before stroke number one. That would have been after the seizure that Sorry. I tore apart part of my school having a seizure. It was fantastic. Nothing was broken. I'm in a lab environment. We've got knives, beakers, dead animals,
Mm,
like stuff scattered all over. And like every day they're like, don't forget where the decontamination station is. Someone will break something. It's part of life. And I was getting kind of woozy, and like other people were talking to me a lot slower, which usually means there's something wrong.
mm,
And I had a seizure that was so bad, but like I broke nothing in the lab. I was so proud of myself. I kicked several people because the first thing people do when you seize is they grab your feet, no,
mm,
and they want to stick their hands in your mouth, no. If your teeth are chattering, you get bit if you stick your hand in my mouth. Just
right.
don't be stupid. Don't grab the legs. Let the person thrash. Um, so yeah, 5 years ago, my main advice probably would have been, oh, give up. No. 2018, I think a lot of my choices probably were good financially in 2018. It's hard to
uh,
know. Um, I probably would have pushed harder to be a teaching assistant sooner, which doesn't necessarily impact finances directly, but I lobbied for it because I like teaching. I enjoy helping children learn.
mm,
And like it got very contentious because they didn't want me in the program. I had to get several professors to sign off on it. It was a mess. It was easily the most fun I probably ever had in a class was helping kids learn.
mm,
So that's something again, 5 years ago, I would have focused harder on the teaching aspect. Um, Probably would have backed out of the class if you have the foresight to see where things are going. Again,
mm,
5 years ago was before the COVID shutdown. Um,
mm,
Knowing that was coming, humorously enough, there was someone, in fact, someone who firmly believed COVID was not real, put up a thing probably about a year before COVID that every 100 years, I want to say it was on the 20th year of the century, there's been a pandemic or disaster. They had this list, and I have no idea how accurate the list is, but it was like,
mm,
15, 20, 16, 27, get 1920, and it said 2020 seems like if the things track, there's going to be a horrible disaster, a health issue. And of course, everyone laughed because it seemed so funny back then. 50 million, whatever, it seemed like 50 million years ago. Um, so again, if you could have seen the COVID shutdown coming, a lot of choices would have been different.
mm,
Um, Georgia's acting industry didn't really kick off. It's been around for decades as far as having gigs in Georgia, but things didn't really kick off, I don't think, until about 15 years ago. They got really, really heavy about 10 years ago.
mm,
Again, had I known there was a market for ugly, dumb white guy, yay. That's something I would have done differently. Um, in theory, would have taken better care of my health as best I could. Again, in theory. But if we're
mm,
just focusing on finances, it's really hard to say again for just like 5 years ago what I would do differently. That's a very good question. Mainly would just probably point at myself and laugh and say, you just don't know what's gonna come. You're gonna be a drinker, aren't you? And I don't drink, which is probably part of the problem.
uh,
Go ahead.
what are your financial goals in 5 years?
5 years, yay. Can we go back to the bullet and the gun? No.
Oh no.
Sorry. Well, you wanted honesty. 5 years in theory. Isn't it all theoretical? My home will be finished being repaired in theory in 5 years. This home will be gone. We will go ahead and move our lives completely down to one city. Yay. Again, all in theory. This house, if it is sold, will more than zero out all debt, period.
Mm,
Like, I'm someone who figures out fastidiously. If you really wanted some long, long equations, I could send the emails. All debt will be wiped. And that's if we did a cut sale and just dumped it.
mm,
Um, that will write a lot of things as far as that. I will still hopefully be doing gig work. It is at times very exhausting. It is at times not even worth the money you're getting,
mm,
but it's a very good therapeutic outlet, which is something that part of where people screw themselves up with financial literacy is they don't consider that they're people.
mm,
Um, I know someone who is actually very, very well off financially as far as he has exceedingly good budgets. He lives in Michigan. He's had health problems pop up like I just can't believe.
mhm,
And he's got a really good job with the city, with the Board of Education. But he's like, oh, I'm so tired of my finances. I've only got, I think it was 10,000 in savings. Like he
mm,
is absolutely, I would love to be that solvent and that well reasoned. As far as logical expectations, 5 years from now, I do expect debts to have been zeroed out. Whether or
mm,
not that means I'm actually sitting pretty with something extra in the bank, or if I'm still living basically check to check, that I can't say. If I could stabilize my medical issues, yay. Um, Still hoping for the mutant thing, man. The pay is so good if I have that one freaky gene. And they're like, it
Yes.
really should not be in a white guy. And if it is, we're gonna be so happy. I'm like, take the blood. I would like to reach a point where financially I don't sell blood for testing to make money. That would
Mhm,
be a financial goal. But that's basically where I see myself being is mostly in Macon. Um, Pushing forward enough, I will probably eventually have to have a place in Atlanta because the if I continue doing the gig work, the transit back and forth is very, very
mhm,
tiresome. You
yeah.
can get they snap up quickly, but you can get very cheap $100 a week little rooms, basically like an Airbnb situation.
Mhm,
If you're doing 2, 3 gigs that are 100 plus each gig, that more than pays for that 1 week up there. So that will be kind of a plan. But the main goal is financial solvency. Having absolutely no outstanding debts
mhm,
will be fantastic. I will probably always be the person who makes at least one large purchase on the like Bank of America, Best Buy account, for instance, because it does build up credit and because you do eventually need replacement things. The phone that I'm currently using to communicate with you was the last large purchase I did. I had a BlackBerry Key 2 that eventually did die. I cried a lot. I missed that phone.
uh,
It did everything I needed. I got a Samsung Galaxy. This has probably been about 3 years ago. It was in a monsoon. I chose a bad day to walk, and like we were just absolutely flooded. Like I was more water than man. When the
uh,
driver, I called an Uber, which is part of what killed the phone because the water was getting into the phone. And I just told her, I'm like, just please come, and I'm so sorry for your seats.
mhm.
And she's like, as soon as I realized you were out in this rain, I was going to come anyway. I was like, dang. That is probably the only time I have stood in the middle of a road and tried to flag people down because there were people with like big pickups. And I'm like, I will climb in the back of their pickup and just because, like the wind was blowing. It was small month. It was horribly bad.
Mhm,
But that killed that phone. I to be able to do what I need to do, I have to have two phones because one is always I can't find the other one right now. I need to go look for it. So I got this one. That is the newest large payment I made. When I got this, because I had to make a large payment to get the phone and have the payments, um, replaced our fridge that had died. Things like that. So I'll probably always have debt in that I will always have the, rooms to go, I think is what popularized the, pay in 30 years, get the furniture now. It'll be destroyed by
mhm,
then, but you'll still be paying on it.
mhm,
So I'll probably always be doing that sort of thing as far as when the time comes, upgrading a computer or getting a fridge that works. So that kind of debt will probably always be there, that little pressure.
mhm,
I would like to reach the point where I was financially set enough that I don't need to worry about next week, next month. There's an illustration, and I actually heard it. Oh goodness, probably 30 years ago, and then it was for one of my classes more recently. 5 years ago? And it's of a farming village where they have the little boats and they ride out and they catch a few fish, they sell the fish in the market, and then they go and take a nap.
mhm,
And someone from mainland comes and is mocking them because they're so lazy. He's like, if you guys really worked at this, you could build bigger ships, you could this and that, and you'd be able to bring in so much fish and make so much money. And the guy looks at him and says, well, then what am I going to do in 20 years? Oh, then you'll retire. What does that mean? It means you might do some stuff and then you'll sleep in the afternoon. And I was like, well, I'm already there. And that's to me is financial literacy. That's
uh,
the keeping your eyes same size as your stomach.
mhm,
I think a lot of people, to them being solvent is full bank account and everything top of the line and this and that. Money is a tool. It's a very useful tool to have, set aside for when you need it, but it is a tool. It shouldn't be the goal. Um, I wear boots, like I said, I wear them out in about 3 months. Gotta get the cheap boots at Walmart. If I knew that there was a pair of boots that would last me a year and were serviceable and stuff, I'd probably buy them. Beyond that, shoes to me are a tool. I'm not someone who's looking for the oh God, there are apparently shoes that are like $800. I don't understand that. Those go on your
yeah,
feet. Those are stinky.
right,
Um, that's how I am. So that to me would be happy. There's an old, I think it was a country song. Pray to God for a car. It might not be a Cadillac, but it'll get me to work.
mm,
That kind of mentality. If I keep that, if I could keep my eyes simple as far as that, I think things would be fine.
mhm,
Yeah, no major debts. That really is the biggest thing.
boom,
To try to bring it back to where you actually asked the question.
mhm. Well, that's basically all the questions. I want to thank you for your time. We're gonna
Yes,
cut the recording right now and
yeah,
basically chill for a little bit until it fully uploads.
yeah,
Once
that's
again,
fine.
thank you for your time.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
I was honestly expecting this to be a scam. So, no, I've done several interviews. I actually, the last interview gig I did was, it's this guy in Nashville. He comes to Georgia and
uh,
he'll buy you lunch if you let him interview you. And
uh,
it's his whole thing. I don't get it, but it makes him happy. Like, cool. But no, I had a young lady. And this is when I first started doing gig work, and I've done like IRB research. Like, you have to get a million sign-offs from your university that you're not going to kill somebody, basically, and they have
right.
to wait with. And so this girl puts the thing on Craigslist. She needs to interview people for her classes, and she'll pay
Mm,
them $50. I'm like, I don't even need to get paid if it's not costing me money to get to you, and it's for education.
mm.
Awesome. Uh, to be clear, that was her. Your thing said money. I expect money. But so she said she'll pay you $50. I'm like, cool. She described it as a discomfort exercise. And
uh,
like, she didn't describe it as such. And I thought, okay, she's a student. She doesn't know the terminology. That's fine. And she said what it was is she was going to like call people on the phone, do like a conference call or a Zoom call,
uh,
and send them disturbing images and see like when they say, okay, I can't watch. No, I'm done. To like see what the cutoff point is, or ask them like, how did that make you feel? Like,
mm,
that's cool. It's kind of strange, but that's cool.
right.
She's like, so the disturbing images are gonna be me opening my blouse. I'm like, huh? She's like, I'll slowly unbutton my blouse, and you'll tell me when it seems uncomfortable. I'm like, that's a little strange. I'm like, your professor signed off on this? Yeah, they signed off on it. So we're getting close to the date of doing it. I'm still waiting for the IRB, the thick, I won't sue you. I can quit if I need to. If I die during the experiment, it's on me.
Mm,
And she said, well, it's $50 and I need your Cash App information. I'm like, but why are you paying me? I haven't done anything. I give her the Cash App thing. I get a thing saying $50 for the girl's name. I start to click on it. No, she was billing me. Apparently her whole scam was, she's
uh,
very successful apparently,
uh,
was she was a webcam stripper. That was the
mm,
whole thing. She was billing guys $50 to take her clothes off. And I'm like, you could have like saved so much time if you had just said, I'm a low cost webcam stripper who wants to pay
mm.
me. So that's kind of what I thought this was going to be. I've had at least two, no, I've had at least two Zoom auditions where like, I'm very serious if I have an audition. I actually am supposed to send a couple in and I haven't done it yet. And
uh,
if I wait too long, I won't. But I don't believe in just like slapping it together. If it's last minute, I will, but I try to save that time. I don't do other things that. And so the first one I had, we're sitting there and they're talking about Denzel Washington. I'm like, is he in the script? Like, why do I need to know what he did in 1987? And they're saying all these big names to seem like they have authority. They're doing call to
mm,
authority. I know Denzel Washington's name. You know it. You'll like me. And towards the end, they're like, so once you hire us, I sent them a message. I'm like, where do I actually audition for something? Because that's the only reason we're here. And it
mm,
was a scam. The next one, and that's only happened twice so far. The next one swore it was an audition. Took the time of my day. I'm sitting there, and they're like, now our company isn't doing anything for you because it's COVID time. We don't do anything anymore. You upload all your information, you this and that. I'm like, okay, this doesn't sound like an audition. So once you send us our $200, we'll let you upload your information to a server where we don't do anything. And
mm.
like, he literally said, I do nothing for you. Give me $200. So I was kind of expecting that to happen here. I was very glad it didn't. Um, I'm very stingy. That's my financial literacy. I just had a young girl on one of the acting groups on Facebook because most of my jobs come from Facebook, Craigslist, or Instagram, scarily enough.
Mm,
Um, Twice I've worked through Instagram. Both times I was paid. Both times it was a trade phone swap or something they call it from YouTube, where
mm,
a boy and girl meet and they talk to an interviewer, and the interviewer's like, how long have you two known each other? Do you trust each other? Will you swap your phones? And then the girl finds out she's being cheated on. Like, that's the
yeah.
whole dumb skit.
Mm,
I think it's idiotic, but they paid me, so I did it.
mm,
The last one I did, I got flogged in a local park because like that's just where it went. I'm like, they paid me. Um, but yeah, I saw a girl on Facebook complaining, don't ever work for such and such agency. It's not a real agency. And I was like, well, she had to learn. After you send them a bunch of money and gift cards, I was like, oh dear God, no.
yeah,
Um,
don't send money.
Gift cards. First off, no. Secondly, I actually, for Uber, for instance, um, when there's a sale or when I can get a discount rate, I'll buy an Uber gift card from like Best Buy or Walmart or whatever. There are times where they won't even sell me directly to me a gift card because they're
Mm,
afraid I'll give it to a scammer. And so like you have to sign off. I'm not stupid. I won't hand this to someone down the street because they say they're IRS.
mm,
I am very much that person that I can be as friendly as I can be, but as soon as you start saying this is what you owe me for services not even rendered, I think things end very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but
That's
no, you were fine. I realize I'm overly verbose.
You're good.
As I always tell people, if
Uh,
you have a specific demographic you're looking for the interviews, I can certainly find you people or let them know.
mm,
For the mutant gene thing, when I went, I was like, do you need other people? And they're like, yeah, but can they just not look like you? It's like, wow, that's really honest. And they're like, okay, yeah, we want young black people. And I was like, you could have put in the ad young black people. I'm
uh,
not. That does, again, if I have the gene, it'll be very important to them because it's not found a lot in the Caucasian older male
mm,
community. So if I have the gene, it's a very big deal. It's for some sort of disorder or disease or what have you.
yeah.
But
Well,
I've had some really fun jobs in the last years. That's probably the nicest thing that's come out of all of this
mm,
is that the guy who interviewed me for the Lynch thing, that was just weird. I was in town that day anyway. He asked me, he said, do you feel scared doing these jobs? And I'm like, not really. I mean, most have been pretty safe. I mean, there was the one that we didn't get paid on had live ammo when they pointed the gun at my head. So that was a little.
uh,
What had happened was very low production value. They did not bring a prop gun. This is right after Rust. They did
mm,
not bring a prop gun. Everyone in the production staff and in the cast, except me and the woman opposite me, pulled out at least one handgun, some two, did not want to unload their guns. And I was like, oh, if I die here, you will go down for it.
mm,
So the floor was covered in bullets because they just unloaded their clips and dropped the bullets on the floor. The young man who eventually is supposed to shoot me in the script
mm,
was on medication, did not want to unload his gun. I made him unload his gun, and the director's like, I'm glad you stuck to it. And they finally said they did like a cast photo thing, which I didn't know what they were doing because I had a hood over my face. And they're like, the one of the producers said, y'all do know if we kill him and we put out a cast photo of one white guy dead and all those black people smiling, it's gonna be a trial. Because they're all smiling happily while they have a gun in my head. It's what it was. But like, yeah, he didn't want to load his gun. He wanted to use a plastic Kroger sack for my hood and tie it around my face. No, they didn't bring fake handcuffs. So I pulled up my handcuffs. They locked me. He took the keys and tried to leave. Like that was a bad as far as health set.
mm.
That's the anomaly. I've danced on Buford Highway at 1 a.m. That was the first music video. And the guy's like, I'll give people cash if they'll dance on a highway. And I'm like, that's got to be a euphemism for something. And no, he needed backup dancers. He needed backup singers. I told him, I don't sing, I don't dance. At the end, he's like, you really didn't lie to me, but you came. So here's $150. He has not called me back. I wonder why.
Ooh,
Um, Go
do
ahead.
you still have? Do you still happen to have the form that you filled out, like the link for that?
For
Because if
what?
you do
For
have,
you?
yeah, because if you do have other people, just have them fill that out, and I'll probably contact them if they're interested.
The form I think was on the Craigslist ad.
Yep, correct.
I don't think it was actually sent to me, but I can send them the Craigslist link if it's still up. Yeah.
Yep, that's all up. So that should work.
Do you prefer males, females, ethnicity?
Um, no, basically anybody at this point, and then just like yeah,
Okay. I've got
yeah,
about 20 people I send gigs out to now.
cool.
Most of them I can vouch for. Some are just people that I'm sending. So I don't actually vouch for the. Yeah, sorry. I
Mm,
vouched for one person without actually working with him. He was my brother-in-law, and when we got to set, we finally worked on the same set.
mm.
On our way up to the set, he's driving. He says, "I don't know, man. I don't want to break his damned arm." I'm like, huh? I'm looking at the script, looking at nothing about breaking arm. I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, the main actor. I don't think he knows how to act. We've never been there before. We don't know who the main actor is. He's like,
Huh.
so I'm gonna have to break his arm because it says he looks like he's in pain, but I don't think he knows how to do his job. I just don't
Ooh.
want to. And I'm like, oh no. We get to the set. He goes up to the AD and tells her, I don't want to break his damned arm. She starts flipping through the script. His fight scene was removed from the movie, to be clear,
Uh,
because he was going to try to break the. So after that, I don't like swear to someone. This is the greatest person on earth. If I've never worked with them,
right.
but most of them I've worked with and seen that they actually take what they're doing seriously. They're
Mm.
not going to just whip out their boobs or do something else inappropriate. Well, I mean, I guess I kind of did, but sorry.
You're
There's
good. You're
far too
good.
many jobs where I whip
Alright.
this out. Uh,
Uh,
But you did not ask for nudity, so I appreciate that. Although, yeah, I've had a few jobs that actually asked me for nudity, and I'm like, "Have y'all seen me? I'll do it, but you'll regret it." And they said no. No.
With that being said, I'll turn off the recording now, and then
Oh, the
hopefully
recording's
give
going.
me
No.
like a few.